Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say that our parish priest is a very humble man and would like everyone not to get so excited about Geelong's big win over the weekend. There's still a long way to go. Secondly, while we were away during the week, we were reminded of the 3 H's when it comes to services about hymns, homilies and hospitalities. And Sam, I'm about to give you a homily. I would like to thank our musician very much for the lovely hymns that we have here every day. So most of you would probably have been aware that over the last week Father Mike has been away, and I myself was there as well, and most of the Tasmanian clergy. We've been on a plenary in the north of our state. For those who, like me, need to know what something means, a plenary is simply a meeting which is attended by all participants who would otherwise only meet in smaller groups. So there I was, sitting with all the clergy at an evening meal in the back room of the meeting place that we were at. I started to wonder if someone from outside of that room had wandered into that room, looked around and walked back out to their friends, would they be able to say that they had just seen a group of Catholic or Christian men in there, or would they just say there's a group of men eating a meal in there? And this is in no way being discriminatory towards the clergy. It's just simply a thought pattern that I have had around our current preaching series, which has at its basis a theme which is asking us the question, what do we look like? So I'd like to bring it down to our level with a bit of a scenario. We have been out for a night on the town and inadvertently wandered into a street where a whole bunch of people who have obviously been having a really good time are being rounded up by the police. The police, who have had a pretty long, troublesome night, don't see you as somebody who was accidentally in the wrong place at the wrong time and arrest you right along with everyone else. And then let us suppose that at the local police station, everyone is being questioned about their involvement. And when it is your turn, you say, I was not involved. I would never be involved in such an affair as I am a Christian. And the policeman who is talking to you simply says, how would I know that you are a Christian? What would your answer be? Now, Charles Waddell, a professor in anthropology and a Catholic priest who I studied with during my studies, wrote a book titled Jesus Matters, in which he wrote a chapter with a heading that simply stated, something happened. I could never do it justice by trying to explain it, so let me simply read it to you. It goes, the rapid arrest and execution of Jesus left his followers not only faithless, but terrified. They ran for their lives. And yet, nevertheless, something happened. And it happened in Galilee, according to Matthew and Mark, in Jerusalem, according to Luke, or in both places, according to John. And with their fear and doubt vanquished, these followers forsook their safety. And in perilous Jerusalem itself, full of faith, they proclaimed that Jesus is alive. His Abba, Father, had raised Jesus from the dead. Their faith, conviction in this was unassailable. They would end up being shunned, ridiculed, arrested, tortured, and killed, attesting to their experience of the risen Christ. Now, it must be noted, when all this took place, there was no such word as Christian. It hadn't been put out there yet. There was no huge Catholic church building on the corner to run to for safety. These were everyday people, just like ourselves, who had experienced something so profound that it changed their lives forever. And we see it in our first reading when we are told of Peter and the other 11 disciples on the day of Pentecost, going from frightened men living in fear of their lives to proclaimers of the risen Christ. Their safety forgotten within the need to tell everyone of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit and that they had received from the risen Christ. And then we find Peter in our second reading, probably some 30 years later, is still exhorting the risen Christ, for whom we now have faith in God, the one who raised Jesus from the dead so that we can have faith and hope in God. Something happened. So much so that Pentecost and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit was not just a one-time thing, but was the start of a lifetime of mission to the world, proclaiming the faith and hope that they had received and we could receive through the risen Jesus Christ. But of course, we don't all come to this faith and hope in a blinding moment of light, such as the disciples on Pentecost, or even St. Paul's experience on the road to Damascus. And to that end, we have today's gospel, or more commonly known as the road to Emmaus. To many that read this, it is a story about two of Jesus' disciples leaving Jerusalem after the crucifixion in a state of anxiety, of worry, and of deep sadness. That what they had hoped to be a time of glory and retribution had ended with their leader being hung on a tree to die. But to us, this story is much more than this. This is more a story of a lifelong journey. For we all meet Jesus in our lives in different times, conditions, and needs. What brings us to that place of recognition of the risen Christ is as varied as all we are. It could be through study, through tragedy, through experience, through family, friends, acquaintances, maybe even through hearing a great homily. There are so many places that we can encounter Jesus. And it also can be early in life. It can be in the middle of our life. It can be later in life. No matter what, or no matter when, at some time we all find ourselves on that road to Emmaus, where Jesus is explaining everything to us, so that when he breaks the bread and opens our eyes, we will know, just like Peter tells us, that we can have faith and hope in the risen Christ, in the Son of God. So the question becomes, what do we do with this knowledge of the risen Christ? We know that Peter and the other disciples immediately started to tell everyone who would listen, and continued doing that for the rest of their lives. We know that the two disciples on the road to Emmaus immediately rushed back to Jerusalem to tell all the others of their encounter with the risen Christ. But what about us? As like many people today are prone to do, I actually got interested in what it was like to be a follower of Christ today. So I Googled it. Of course, by doing this, you also get to read a lot of stuff that probably should never ever have been written down in the first place. But every now and then you run across something that's a real gem, something that makes you really wonder. I found a blog written by a lady in America who come from a family with no religion background at all, found a church through her school, got baptised at 16, is now married, has a child. And she wrote that we, as followers of Christ, need to make Christ our focus and always choose to be with him to keep our faith alive. It is hard enough in today's busy, self-focused world to leave those selfish cares behind and focus more on God and the way our lives should be lived. So this is why, as a community, we organise events throughout the year in order to stay in touch with each other and keep each other built up. We have a shared hope, a shared faith, and spending time with each other keeps that alive. That was written this year, and it sounds so much like what we read in our scriptures today. And it's pretty basic stuff, really. But just like the original disciples, it was not then and is not now an easy road to travel if you try to do it on your own. They were a community, just as we are a church community today. And over the years, we have found, as humans, many ways to categorise ourselves as communities. We are Christians, we are church, we are Protestant, or we are Anglican, or we are Catholic. And even then, we become Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox. And the categories go on and on. But we're all Christians. And this brings me back to my original scenario. When the policeman is asking that question, how would I know that you are a Christian? And this, of course, is a reflective question that I expect no one to clinically answer, but it should make us think. If through our current scripture readings, we get some idea of what those early Christians were like, the way they led their lives, the way they spread the word, the way they formed communities, it is then a present and proper question to ask ourselves, what do we look like? Is our community as strong as we would like it to be? Are our actions in their church the same as we do in our normal lives? Do we lead lives full of faith and hope in the risen Jesus Christ? And when we look at ourselves as Christians, what is it that we look like?